Hey everyone, before the show gets started with the gents from Trophy and Crank Arm Brewing, we realized we need some beer.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have any in the studio, so we called up our good buddies over at Triangle Wine Company and placed an order online. And let's see, we might actually get a delivery during the show. Wouldn't that be awesome? Go to Triangle Wine Company, use the NCFB promo code, and you'll save 10% off. Away with the show!
You're listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast, coming to you from the Kitchen Studios, located high atop the historic Raleigh building, located in the heart of downtown Raleigh. The NC F&B Podcast takes you behind the scenes of North Carolina's food and beverage industry. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at NCFBPod. This episode is sponsored in part by Food Scene. That's foodseen.com. Providing professional photography, social media management, video production, and website design. That's Food Scene. And now, the sommeliers to the stars, the barbacks in your backyard. It is Max and Matt.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss. And today from the studio, we are talking to two very special brewery owners in the Raleigh area. To my left of Trophy Brewing is Mr. Chris Powers. Welcome, Chris.
Howdy. Thanks for having me.
Howdy. And to my right of Crank Arm is Mr. Adam Eckhardt. Welcome, sir.
Thanks for having me. How we doing?
Doing great, guys. Thanks for coming on in. Truth be told, and I've now told the story to everybody in the kitchen in our little workspace up here about 17 times, but it's genuine when I say this. This was ridiculous how this podcast came to be. I was speaking with my beautiful counterpart, Matt Weiss, about we needed to get more brewers on the show, and definitely somebody from Raleigh, since that's where we're from. And it's like, maybe the guys from Trophy and or Crank Arm, that would be cool. So I got on the old Google and I was checking you guys out and just checking, I'm like, Chris, yeah, Adam, yeah, I got to get in touch with those guys. Cut to the very next morning. I'm driving my truck. I'm pulling in to the parking garage right next door to Chuck's over there on Wilmington, and I almost run the two of you over.
That's true. We were engaged in a serious conversation.
Yeah. It's the weirdest goddamn thing. I was going to reach out to you that afternoon to say, you guys want to be on the show? And you were both walking down the street. And
You'd already reached out astrally. Yes.
Yeah, you put it in the ethos.
You had projected yourself into our world.
Secret. It's the secret.
Wait, try right now. Say, I really want to come into like $25 million. Just say it out loud.
I really wish Scarlett Johansson would just be on the podcast. I have priorities.
She's listening.
Does she have a food and beverage scope?
I'm sure we'd make do.
Yeah.
Her ears are currently ringing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Her agent actually lives in the Raleigh area, so.
There you go. And so with that, I was like, wait a minute. You're Chris, you're Adam. You guys run these two amazing local breweries. I really wanted you both on the show. Would you please be on our show? And then you gave me your business cards, and they've been sitting on the table this whole time. And emails led to coordination, and then you were here.
Voila.
And so that's the main reason I paint that picture is not for the whole crazy coincidental connection, but the fact that you two guys run your own breweries, successful businesses and establishments, and you're buddies, and you are direct competitors. You make the same product, and you would think maybe it's like the McEnroe and Yvonne Lendl thing of the '80s, but it's not the case. You guys like shoot the shit and hang out.
Yeah, well, yeah, for sure. That's one of the beauties of the North Carolina craft beer scene is that we've known each other for a long time now. I mean, and we've started off, and Adam and Les worked together at a homebrew shop, along with 3 or 4 other brewers, commercial brewers across Wake County. And the more we can do to help the scene, and it's way better to get along with somebody. It's better to have a neighbor than it is to have a competitor, and that's kind of how we look at it.
Know your enemy.
Know your enemy.
Well, we look at it like coopetition.
I like that.
We share ideas, we share ingredients. If some,
for sure,
less is run out of rice hulls or oats, as is the case with most breweries these days.
Yeah. So how is it that you guys go back and know each other? Is it just from the brewing community or
drinking beer?
Drinking beer.
Drinking beer.
Yeah. Okay.
Drinking quality beer, I would say. I mean, as someone who consumes beer and then starts to really get into it, much like you all would know with everything, right?
Sure.
How'd you get started in anything? Well, hopefully you were a consumer of it first and then really got into it, became a hobby, and then that hobby turns into an obsession. You work in the industry in some manner and go from there into working another way, and eventually it gets insane and you get this noodle in your head that says open a business, and then the real madness starts.
Yeah, so let's jump in there because you had the crank arm and the whole cycling business before the brewery, so you were business-minded.
So yeah, the idea originally came for the brewery first, a cycling pedestrian-friendly brewery in downtown Raleigh, and met another partner who wanted to start a rickshaw bar, and that went together, and we knew we wanted to open the brewery, but it's much easier to start with a smaller business and work our way into it.
What does a rickshaw bar entail for those
You
people?
know, I don't
who are
know
like,
what.
do you mean,
I don't
Matt?
know what.
You haven't been to a rickshaw?
Yeah, I don't know what Dylan was thinking.
LA's teeming with rickshaw bars.
rickshaw bars? Is that like
They're
everyone
actually-
drives around in a rickshaw drinking, or like?
No, the idea was to bring people in and sort of have a fanfare of that. Didn't quite end up that way. You know,
Okay.
we ran the rickshaws out of the brewery for a while, and then the space sort of moved them into our new space.
But cycling was an important aspect of your life. Like you,
Absolutely. Raleigh has become much more cycling friendly, doing group rides in the area, riding my bicycle almost before I could run. It's been part of my life and Dylan and Bob's life.
Dylan and Bob.
Yeah, Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
Bob and Dylan. How about that? Yeah, definitely heard that. But yeah, cycling, we're part of the cycling community, the beer community, bring our loves together. It's a huge recreational sport, so why not?
There you go.
Drinking.
you'll live forever if you ride your bike every day, right? That's kind of like that's one of the thoughts. Unless you get hit by me on my truck.
Almost happened.
Well, then you'll just be on a podcast if you survive. So, Chris, what about you? Where does the idea for Trophy Brewing come from, and how did you get started?
Yeah, so my partner Woody and I fell in love with craft beer years ago. So we were both managing restaurants for other people and doing bar programs, developing bar programs, and kind of trying to teach the staff about what we're excited about and share that enthusiasm for new products and things like that. So we fell in love with craft beer working at a bar called Bogart's American Grill on Glenwood Avenue. In about 2000, and we worked there in 2002 to 2005 or 6. But we worked there, and the folks that owned that place owned a little brewery in Fayetteville, which is called the Mash House, and that was the first real experience that we were getting into craft beer.
Yeah.
We're like, wow, this is crazy. This is what beer can be like. And we were like, hey, look, this is awesome. This beer is really great. Let's go talk to the brewer. And he was one of those brewers' personalities that wasn't gregarious or outgoing. He wanted to brew beer and be done by 5 p.m. and be playing Golden Tea till 7 and then be home to be back at 7 p.m. the next day, which is a fact. If you couldn't find him, you would call the bar and be like, hey, is Zach still there? Yeah, he's playing Golden Tea.
I beat Matt last time we played Golden Tea.
You beat me badly.
Ooh,
Yeah,
still sore.
I was very, very rusty at Golden Tea.
So we fell in love with craft beer and trying to get people excited about it and decided that was a passion that we really wanted to follow. So in 2009, Woody and I opened up a place with the help of a partner, David, and we opened a place called the Busy Bee Cafe, and that's where we got to celebrate craft beer further.
Yeah.
We wanted to be a step away from what people expected. You'd go to your big chain restaurants and you'd have Sam Adams, you'd have Blue Moon, and all these other macro beers. We wanted to be the place that told you about the beer that inspired that beer, or the place that turned you onto a beer that's actually what that beer is supposed to be like. And we did that, the Busy Bee, from 2009 until 2017. And we really wanted to have a little bit more control. So we were going to breweries and saying, hey, I know you can't afford to buy barrels right now, but I'm going to go get a barrel. I'll bring it to you and just give me the liquid out of it first. You keep the barrel after that, and then you do whatever you want with it. Brewers are creative people. They want to continue to be advancing their process and using new ingredients and getting better, and like going into work every day and making the donuts, making your red, your brown, your stout, and your IPA. I mean, who wants to do that? That's why Zach was ready to get off the clock and just start making Golden Tea, because he was making the same damn thing every time.
Yeah.
So what we wanted to do was kind of push the boundaries. So we'd go to people and say, hey, listen, man, I know you guys have never made a Berliner Weiss, which in hindsight was a bad idea, but we went to people and say, hey, will you brew us a Berliner Weiss? We'll buy it all. And we'll talk to people about it, get people excited about it, and it'll be off your sheet. You'll know that it has a home, and we're going to take it all. So we were working collaborations with breweries across the country before we even opened up Trophy.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
How did you, because your brewer had some connections, or how did people even take you seriously?
Well, I'd been working in craft beer for a while.
Money.
Yeah.
They were buying the
Yeah, they were buying.
I mean, that's part of it. But
You were running people over with your car and being like, "Hey, give me your business card."
no, it was kind of like we made connections. So like we'd have beer reps come in to talk to us about beer at Busy Bee Cafe, and we'd say, "Hey, listen, this is really great. Well, we support your brand, and if your brewer comes to town, we'll do a dinner, and then get to know the brewers, and then start the relationships that way."
Yeah.
So we would do collaboration beers, and when we started talking to Les about becoming the head brewer, we would say, "Hey, Les, why don't you come along with us?" And we'd take him to a brewery, learn how to brew in a 20-barrel system, and kind of hear the ins and outs of brewing on a system of that scale.
Gotcha. So I want to take this back to the beginning, because for the two of you, it strikes me as you guys got started, both around 2011?
2013 we both opened,
2013 you
right?
both opened.
Yeah.
Okay.
Legally, 2012.
Okay.
Technically, 2013.
Now, for me, kind of being on the outside, I mean, I read a little bit about beer and hear about it, but it seemed to me like, okay, the craft beer bubble had already somewhat burst. I mean, certainly wasn't at the end of it, but it's like, okay, there's a lot. How do you differentiate and distinguish yourselves coming into the market at that time? And I mean, I know we've already talked about doing a lot of different beers and having interest about that, but it also strikes me, just to play devil's advocate for a second, that a lot of other breweries are doing the same thing. So how do you establish yourself? It's even with our own community within Raleigh, there's a lot of competition. So how does that happen, and what are some of the thoughts that differentiates yourself?
You make the best beer possible. You make the beer you want to drink and the consumer wants to drink. You vary it, because new is a flavor. It's a huge flavor for folks. You use the best ingredients possible. You stay on your toes. You don't sit back and make a brown ale, a red ale, an IPA. You make 19,000 IPAs.
Yeah.
You change it up. You collaborate with people. You collaborate with artisans that make products that are local and from around the world that are the best at what they do. You market well. You don't just sort of throw something out there and hope it works. You think about your brand, and I think we both are very brand conscious folks, and how it relates to it always.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
We have somebody at the door.
Oh,
It's the Triangle Wine Company.
Mr. Chris Rose.
Did somebody order a Polish sausage?
Wow.
Look at this.
What's up, man?
Right on time, man. I was getting thirsty.
You really do deliver.
Absolutely, especially when it's good beer.
Oh, very
right,
nice.
solid.
He's still acting, folks. He's still acting. What do you got here? Oh, you actually have crank arm beer and trophy beer with you. Maybe I'll ask the guys that run the places to describe what these beers are.
Oh, that might be a good idea.
Adam, what's in front of you right now?
I have Icicle, which is our winter warmer. A little different than a lot of winter warmers with the ingredients that are in it. Cardamom, orange zest, and ginger in a strong American brown ale. Not just your run-of-the-mill brown ale.
Yeah, this isn't just your typical.
So in one of our new lovely cans.
Yeah, that's a beautiful can, too.
So Adam.
There it
Baldy.
goes with the marketing wing.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, this was all encompassingly.
Yeah.
Really, this can flew off the shelves. You can't really buy it from me anymore.
That's awesome.
So go see folks and buy this.
Yeah. I don't know if Triangle Wine Company even carries it anymore. We might bought it the last ones.
Might have sold them out. And Chris, what do we have from Trophy over here?
So there's two. We have El Hombre, which is our horchata stout. You guys familiar with horchata? Yes,
Oh, man.
this is.
I make it
Didn't
from
that
scratch
just
at the
get
house.
released or something
Yes,
like
this just got released last week, and that is 7% stout with vanilla, cinnamon, a little bit of lactose sugar to kind of like round out that milky flavor to it, and then our People Power beer, which is the beer that we brewed for the ACLU.
Oh.
So we brewed this beer to kind of bring awareness around helping people get out there to vote.
This?
So,
Yeah, that's
Very
awesome.
cool.
yeah.
Well, hey, Chris from Triangle Wine Company, it was awesome. Thank you for coming by, man.
You're welcome, man. And
Anything
Yeah.
going on at Triangle Wine Company? Like all the champagne you're doing right now.
Yeah, we've got a lot of champagne, obviously, popping up. We've got some nice gift packs there. We also, hopefully, in the next week or so, we'll be opening up our 4th store in Holly Springs.
Yeah. Matt can walk there and roll home.
Yes,
Yep.
he's made that comment a few times. So I'm expecting Uber to show up several times at
Or
least
just
when
put
I
a
see him.
cot in there for me. I mean,
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
But I just want to thank these guys for brewing good beer, because there's a lot of people who, not necessarily in Raleigh, but across the board, that are making a lot of mediocre beer. So it's nice to celebrate guys who make really good beer.
Yeah.
Boom,
Thanks
well
for
said.
supporting us, man.
Thank you so much.
let's
Owner
crack-
himself comes in. I mean, that's
I know.
service.
Thanks, guys. Have a
Thanks,
good one.
Chris.
Take care. Well, let's
Thank
chat.
you.
Let's pop into some of this beer.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to, though, leave that question out for Chris to get a chance to chat about that in terms of back to the fact of how you differentiate yourself from all the coopetition around there.
Yeah, so we have an advantage that a lot of other breweries may not. Like we have a 3-barrel system. So that's kind of what we do. We roll out experimental batches all the time. Last year we did about 80 different beers. So actually through 2018 we did about 80 different ones. That's including large system and small system. But that's a pretty significant amount of beer that's coming out of there. And each one is, there's very few repeats. There are some tweaks that are made, but overall they're all new beers, aside from Trophy Wife, Cloud Surfer, and Trophy Husband earlier in the spring. Everything else is new.
Sorry, Adam, you do like about 60 beers a year, something like that. So
Last year we clocked in at 47. This year we're on.
it was a low year for you.
Well, 47, yeah, we're not the norm, as far as breweries. Most folks have a core, and then they just make their seasonal things. I know Les and I have very similar philosophies, we always did, of brewing something new all the time.
Yeah.
We just carried that through professionally into this. We have one system. We'll soon have 2 systems, so we can double up too.
Solid.
So we have a 7-barrel system right now. We're getting ready to, hopefully, with everything going online, we'll have a 20-barrel 3-vessel system online in the next 3 months or so.
When you have a 7-barrel system, that means you're just making one beer, 7 barrels of one beer.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay. So essentially, like every other time you're brewing, you're making something different. So from a business perspective, because you do think about like, oh, well, you need to have your staple products and then you add on items from there.
Yeah.
Like, well, you do, right? You have the unicycle and you have...
Trophy Wife is all the time.
Trophy Wife.
And Cloud Surfer's become pretty much full-time as
Yeah.
well.
We have 3 full-time beers.
Yeah.
And so how often do those get brewed?
Twice a week.
Twice a week. Okay.
We
then,
we do almost 14 batches a week, so we double batch like constantly.
So just from a actual technical perspective, so you're making those beers twice a week, and then are the other 5 days being brewed? Are you brewing on Sundays, and then on those 5 days you're brewing just like creative other different projects?
And I retract that number. We'll come back there.
Yeah.
We brew about 10 times a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can do almost 2 cycles a day.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Just for scale, we brew on a 20-barrel system. So
Okay.
typically, there is one day a week that we do triples, and that's Thursdays. And that's typically going to be Cloud Surfer, or that's going to be Trophy Wife, because we have 2 60-barrel fermenters that are kind of in the back of the brewery.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so we're on pace to do about 6,000 barrels of beer this year.
Okay.
That's a
Which
lot
is
of production.
Which
It
is
is
almost
a lot.
triple what we do.
Yeah.
But we also do that in the 600 square feet at Crank Arm. So when you see the beer that's out in the public all over the triangle and what's in our tap room, that is brewed in 600 square feet of brewing space right
Wow.
now. And it's a third of what they make.
Yeah. And because you guys also have like a nano brewery at the pizza spot, is that right? Or at the tap room?
We actually moved it over to the tap room.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the tiny system that we started on. So that's a 3-barrel electric system, and that's what Les and Josh brewed on in the closet over there on Morgan Street. The old bail bondsman's office is where they worked for 3 years.
And let's not sleep on the pizza, by the way, because when I first moved
Well,
here,
yeah.
that's what everybody told me in town. Like, oh, by the way, best pizza in town, you got to go to Trophy. I'm like, wait, they're the brewery, right? Like, yeah, but they make some ridiculous pizza, and you've won awards. Like, your pizza is not just like a cool local favorite. People will come here to Raleigh
For the
just
pizza.
to get the pizza.
Oh yeah, we go to beer festivals and people are like, "The beers are awesome. Do you have any pizza?"
Yeah.
No, not on me, but
Was that like maybe kind of saying the same thing that Adam said earlier, like when with the intent of making a pizza, where you're just like, we got to make the best pizza that we can? And
that was the goal. Like we're sitting down we're talking about a restaurant concept and bar concept, or like what are your favorite things to kind of pair? What's going to appeal to people, and what's going to be something that we can take in an exciting direction? And that's what we kind of did with the pizza. So we started up just as a bar. So we were brewing our own beer and had a bar. Our legal occupancy over there was 14.
yeah,
And if
that's
you
not a big
ever drove by
place.
there, and if you ever drove by there during the week before we opened up that outdoor patio, there was a line outside. We sold thousands of memberships because we didn't have food, so we had to have a membership policy there. But But when we thought about it, we're like, what's the best thing to pair with, with beer? It's pizza. Beer and pizza. Quality beer with interesting ingredients. We can have our chef take a different lean on a pizza. We use everything from cauliflower, like pureed cauliflower as a base. We use mashed potatoes as a base. Some pretty wild ingredients, but all like quality local stuff, and then we just use it in an interesting way to pair with some pretty wild beers. We want people to come back and be able to have a different beer if they come twice a week, and you can do that just because we're rolling out new things all the time.
Yeah, I would stand in a very long line to get pizza there. I was like, damn, this place must be really good because there's a line out the door. But then your bartenders were making really interesting cocktails too. Like you didn't just mess around. I mean, I was really impressed all the way through. Like cocktail program was humming. Pizza is amazing. The beer is delicious. Like that spot in itself is a little gold mine, and like we could do a whole podcast just on that one thing. We're not going to do that right now.
Okay.
But we could.
Well, it seems like for both of you, I assume that service has been a key to your success, and isn't it? I'm pretty sure it was Trophy when you told me that story about you needing a keg for the weekend when you were managing Midtown Grill, and his sales guy hooked you up and was like, "I'll actually be there in like 2 hours."
Jason.
It was Jason.
Yeah.
So, I talked about, it was in the very beginning of this podcast. We were talking about hospitality. We were talking about why we choose certain companies over others.
Yeah.
And I gave an example of Trophy, and I said, back in the day, I was at Midtown Grill. For one, you guys weren't brewing enough to really support every restaurant that wanted beer, so you almost kind of had to be a cool kid to get some. And we tried and pleaded for a while, and Phil Harmon, who's still the bar manager there, he went to Trophy and was like, "Look, guys, we got to get your beer because I love this stuff." And finally, we wore you down. And you're like, "Yeah, that's fine." But I remember we wanted it. We had to get like a new keg line. We ran out of something. We needed something. I just called. I spoke to Jason on the phone. It was 9 a.m, and we had an event. We needed beer. And I was like, "I'd really like to get Trophy on tap." He's like, "Yeah, man, what are you thinking?" I go, "Would I be a total dick if I said
nude
this morning?" And he goes, wow, yeah, I could do that." I'm like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, consider it done." And he just showed up. That was at 9:30 in the morning. He showed up at 11. He cleaned my lines, put on Trophy Wife, full barrel or half barrel, got it on there, gave us like some swag and like put the Trophy
awesome.
tap handle on there. It was like a bowler or something. And I was like, holy crap, man. Like now we're selling Trophy.
Yeah.
And it was like 2 hours later, we were open for business, and boom, like I reprinted the menus and everything. It was on. But it was just so easy and customer first and customer service. And since then, they might still have Trophy on at Midtown, and I've been removed from there for 2 years. But it's like the longevity stayed because the customer service was the key factor in that business.
For sure. I think that's one way that we set ourselves apart, like being both small businesses, is that people have a million choices. So you want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward and you're taking care of people.
Yeah.
A, they're your neighbor. B, you're going to run into them at the grocery store.
Right.
Why not go out of your way and help somebody out if you can? And most of the times, our guys will just throw a keg in the back of the car and be like, "All right, I'll meet you there in 15 minutes," or meet you, wherever you need to make sure that we get it on and get it tasting right, and that just makes for a longer term relationship.
It's an advantage we have is we both do self distribution.
Right.
So you can call us and we can roll it to you, and we will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, what is that law? Because I actually was just having that conversation about that. What is it? The Red Oak Law, right? Where, and it sounds like at least Trophy, you're making more product now than Crank Arm, as we just established, but you're not at the Red Oak distribution level. But when you get there,
25,000 barrels.
It's 25,000 barrels.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you get to that level, you no longer in North Carolina can self-distribute. You have to have a distributor. Mm-hmm. And I guess their biggest complaint Red Oak was having, because they are, I guess, our largest distributor of beer in North Carolina.
They're one of them.
Yeah, they're up there. It's like Red Oak and the two other
Old
guys.
Mac.
Old Mac and then
Noda.
guys from Noda, yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So those three are leading.
I would just always keep my production at 24,999.
Exactly.
I think they cut it 50.
Yeah.
It's like 950.
Well, one of the things that goes back to customer service was their whole argument was they spent so much time and effort on their customer service and handling their customers and knowing everybody that when they had to separate and go to a distributor,
it hurt sales, yeah.
It wasn't the same experience. And so people are like, I'm not going to deal with Red Oak because whatever. And they were cursed by just being too big, too popular. Like too many people wanted them. It's like I don't like Nirvana anymore, man.
I like them when they're indie.
Yeah, you mean like when the CD sounded exactly the same as it sounds right now? It's like shut up. It's okay when people like something, it's because it's probably a good product. But they ended up like fighting that rule or so and pushed it up enough to where they could still maintain the production level they wanted and still distribute on their own. Because that's a huge chain of command that you're giving to somebody else, and it's now they're the new faces of your brand, and you're like, yeah, but you didn't come through my culture of what I created, and that's something that you guys take pretty serious.
Oh, for sure. And it's frightening to think about. Like if I think about all the work that goes into talking about every single aspect of our beer. Ingredients, water profile, hops, where they're coming from, the beer, the inspiration for the beer. And every step away from that, you lose some of that.
Right.
Every step away from being connected to the brewer or the owner of the brewery. A big part of what we do, what makes it special, is the story. And as soon as you put it in the hands of somebody else who, didn't mortgage their house for their business and all these other things, they're like, whatever. This guy didn't take me on a trip.
No, they're not going to tell the story the same way. What is the plan for you guys? Like, what would be an ideal level of production?
1 million.
Yeah,
is there no end to it?
I mean, it's ultimately up to the folks that drink the beer. Honestly, if enough folks drink it and there's a demand for it, it'll keep rising. With us, one other added aspect of why we're a self-distributor is we produce this quality product. We want to make sure that it's taken care of. I don't want it sitting in some warehouse that's 100 degrees, sweltering, and abusing the beer.
Yeah.
So all those things are important, from creating it, using the best ingredients, and taking care of it. So the growth is going to depend on, once again, demand, how much people want. That's what's really going to, and then,
I mean, because for any business, obviously, if you're going to grow and you're going to grow outside the triangle and distribute in other states, etc., then you are going to have to trust other people and have them tell the story as if it's...
We will not leave the state.
You won't leave the state?
No, I look at somebody look at New Glarus, which to me is sort of the epitome of, they aren't self-distributing, but they sell 450,000 barrels of beer a year.
All in the state. We did the math one time.
Wow.
We did the math. It was like everyone was responsible for like 25 gallons of beer per year. And I was like, that is incredible. And I expect all of you to be pulling your weight.
Yeah. Y'all start drinking.
Well, and we get this question a lot when we talk about the NC F&B podcast. It's, North Carolina Food and Beverage podcast, and people that have grand thoughts about who we are and as a distributor, as a show, they're like, you guys kind of pigeonholed yourself as just the North Carolina podcast. Like, you couldn't just do more. For one, we do break the rules all the time and talk to, we just had a champagne producer on last night, and you'll hear about that probably next week or maybe even on this episode. Not sure how that's going to work, but we break the rules, we do things, do whatever. But the key ingredient that I look at it is, we still have more people to get our product out to in this state. We're not done, and there are a few million people in this state, and we don't have a few million downloads. So we got work.
No, 900,000, but not a million yet.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So we need
until
to
you need to get a distributor. Then
what's the round?
We need to get on the Ringer podcast.
Yeah. Then Joe Rogan starts opening all of our shows. Hey, I'm your co-host. Yeah.
I'll just one thing. We didn't break the rules. We made the rules. Because it's our show, and just like you guys do the same. I mean, obviously, you're beholden to some state liquor laws or beer laws, but otherwise, you guys did your own thing.
Yeah. I wanted to mention, we do distribute a little bit of beer outside of the state, but we kind of send it as like a calling card. We go out there.
This podcast is over.
Yeah. We send our beer to when we travel. So if we go out for CBC, or if we go out to Denver for GABF, or if we go out for any events that we can meet other beer people, we typically send some beer out there, throw some events, and we work with distributors that are either craft or they are breweries. So our friends at Night Shift in Boston own a craft beer distributorship company, so they know how to treat beer from A to B.
Right.
And that's what we take that stuff seriously.
You trust those people, yeah. So I'm a novice about these things. So I don't know much about the Great American Beer Festival or the NC Brewers Cup or the Carolina Beer Championships. These are just things I've heard of. How important are these things to your business, and how much do they mean something in the industry?
I'll say
I see you have that very fancy medal right there.
Would have been great if he just went,
It's not really a big deal.
Great American Beer Festival is like winning a Grammy for beer.
Oh, wow.
It's the equivalency of that. It's the big show for beer competition. Matters, we see, White Wall wheat, which will be canned next week in this beautiful can right here. Actually, let's do this.
Yeah,
this will work.
Let's taste that.
Let's do this. I don't have, it's empty. Yeah.
man.
It's so fresh. We're canning it Monday, but we're
That's
looking
fine.
at the can right
But
here.
We can drink some unicycle. Out
Yeah,
of
you
it.
can drink some what?
By the way, let's not gloss over the fact that we just drank Trophy's People Power IPA, and that was, that was delicious. I'm a huge IPA fan, and I always pretend like I'm not, because it's kind of like...
That's like the Nirvana thing. It's like, because a lot of people like IPA, now you feel like you
You're
can't like
over it,
IPA.
Yeah, it's the same. I claim I'm from L.A. when I'm really from San Jose. I'm like, yeah, that's why I'm from L.A.
The inner workings of Max Trujillo.
I am a douchebag.
So GABF was a huge deal for us. White Wall Wheat, which is being canned fresh on Monday, 2-time GABF winner, bronze in 16 and gold in 18. We had literally sent this latest batch that won the gold medal, or that last batch. It was the canning run we'd done, our first time with canning White Wall. We sent production cans to them. Usually we'll bottle something super fresh, send it out. We looked at it like, well, this is a can. It's the best vessel in the world to put beer in besides a keg. Mm-hmm. Let's send it out. Off-the-shelf beers from what we would have sold the general public, pulled out of our cooler, went to GABF, won a gold medal out there.
Wait,
we saw, and all our cans sold out.
How would it have been different if you...
So a lot of times we'll send hops are a volatile.
Yeah.
And so aroma and flavor degrade with time.
Right.
So typically we would take a batch fresh off the fermenter and send it out.
But in a can, though, also, no?
Sure.
Oh, but this you took off your production shelf. I got the difference. Okay.
We would normally send it in a bottle like one of these. We would just leave it blank, send it out like this.
Nobody can see. You're holding up a glass bottle. That's
Correct.
a 375 milliliter.
This is a
500.
podcast.
Yeah.
500. Yep, sorry.
500 milliliter.
I'm used to working on the big screen.
Yeah. Wait, you just made a big statement there before we get away from that. That beer, that can is the ultimate vessel, or keg is the ultimate vessel for beer.
Yeah, for sure.
Is that a shared by universal accepted
Fact.
principle?
Yeah,
Fact.
backed by science.
Okay.
Yep.
Because there's no oxygen exchange. It
No
can't
light.
be.
No
So
light.
even
light,
with-
yeah.
Even with brown bottles, there's a certain amount of light that goes through it and can cause what most folks would consider skunked beer. Happens from light coming in, sunstruck the skunkiness. It's actually a defect in beer. So over time, even with brown bottle, it can affect the beer.
Yeah, because what is it? Coronas are in clear bottles.
Clear bottles, yeah.
But they
That
already
flavor
make-
you get from Corona is literally, and Heineken.
And Heineken. But
Yeah.
that's intentional.
It's intentional, yeah.
Right,
In
they're
the
like,
mid
let's make a
50s.
shitty beer, and we'll make it get even worse by putting it in the vessel, which will two wrongs almost make a right, and now it's the drink that everybody kind of assumes is the flavor profile.
Well, think about it. So many people had Heineken for the first time, and what is the first word that people say? Well, it's skunky, but I like it.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that people are like, oh yeah, I like that green light struck quality of it. There's even we have friends in the industry that are actually using green bottles on purpose to
Lambic.
affect
They wanna
beers in
get
certain
that.
ways.
Well,
they
and
want that
Lambics especially,
skunky,
yeah.
and they want that skunk. They want a little bit of that paper note to it.
Yeah.
Huh.
Brown paper.
Anyhow, I appreciate the effort pushed forth. Maybe that's a good thing that you guys are friends. Maybe you're like, hey, could we all just kind of work together and make this push each other?
I think that's part of what Adam was saying about coopetition.
Yeah.
Coopetition. It's because it's you see. I pay attention to every single can that gets released from any local brewery because I'm like, oh man, that's an interesting format. Why is that a 10-ounce can or an 8-ounce can like some friends have made, or like a 16-ounce cans? That's a weird format, or that's a cool idea, and just kind of see how they're doing it, and then kind of improve our operation based on what they're doing. And I think I would never go there and go to Crank Art and be like, this sucks, and pour it out. I'm always thinking about how do they do that? You want to taste something and be like, is that Citra? What am I tasting there? And kind of think it through and be like, what's the process? And we know these guys fairly well, and we if we have a great experience with a product, we're like, dude, have you had this? Have you tried this malt from Epiphany? Have you tried that? And it's never ooh, company secrets, because it's not how an industry grows. That's not how we as a brewery get better. It's we open doors. We've had other breweries getting ready to open up brewers getting ready to open up breweries come and work with us for months before they get ready to open their own place.
Yeah.
They come in and they stage with us for 3 months before
That's
they open their own
crazy.
thing and design their system based on what we were using. And it's I know you're not going to try to make Trophy Wife, dude. You want to come and work with us, we're going to teach you.
Yeah.
You're going to do some shitty jobs, but you're going to come in and we're going to teach you about what we do at our brewery.
Yeah.
And share some of the lessons that we learned, especially the hard ones. Those are the ones that are in most industries nobody wants to tell you about.
Right.
No one wants to tell you that, something exploded and, Rick was out of work for a week. But, you're you have to share those things, because if you don't get better and you're not sharing those things, then the industry slows down. And people stop thinking about North Carolina for beer. And that's the big problem for us.
success is not a secret. It's like work hard, come up with a good idea, and continue to push forward, and you'll probably get there. And you hear that from everybody, but no one really wants to work as hard as you really need to work hard to get there, except for the few that actually do a really good job. So you can tell everybody exactly what you do, recipes and all, and no one else is really going to recreate what you're doing. It doesn't matter. I talked to Roy Milner, who's the owner-operator of Blackberry Farms.
Yeah, he's a good buddy.
For our listeners, check it out. There will be a new show coming out soon that I've been working on with our friend Candace Townsend, a CHS food writer. It's going to be a new podcast dropping in February. But we went to Tennessee with Sean Brock and Alan Benton and Blackberry Farms. It was really cool. But Roy specifically was talking about, other than us in this town, this small little sleepy town in the Smoky Mountains, there really aren't a lot of other brewers. There was a brewer that was down the street. We wanted to help him. We wanted another brewer to be here. We wanted this to become a destination spot other than just the people coming in to stay at our lodge, like the resort. It's like, no, we want people to come in so they can find out this cool beer here, and there's a pizza joint over here, and whatever. And we helped them as much as possible, and they just couldn't do it. And a year and a half later, business was closed, and that was it. And we were probably more sad for them than they were sad for each other that it didn't work out. It's not an easy business, and you have to totally want to do something to really make it work.
Yeah, for sure. I think if you're committed to it and you're willing to take your lumps, learn from it, and actually get better from it instead of trying to repeat the same damn thing over and over and over, you want to get better and evolve. I think when people contact me and say, hey, what do you like about Raleigh? When I have brewers that come to visit us to do a collaboration, we don't just sit at Trophy. Like, we get up, we're like, dude, you got to go. We're going to Crank Arm. We're going to walk from Crank Arm over to, go to Bavana, or we're going to go to go see our friends over at Linwood. We're going to take people around and introduce to other people because we're trying to build a scene. We want people to come to Raleigh and think about beer. I mean, Asheville, Smashville. I mean, you come to Raleigh when you want to drink great beer.
Wow.
Throwing it down.
Yeah. Well, that brings up a question. So if you were hosting a podcast and you wanted the best beer guys around, who would be on your show?
He's fucking with you a little bit, right?
A little bit.
Yeah.
You know that, Chris, maybe you didn't know this. Is
there a laugh track?
am I seriously going to offend somebody if I play this song?
No, not at all. They'll be tickled.
This is the DeBonzos?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was my little joke. I was going to say that it's time for the NC F&B podcast to have a new theme song. So I was just thinking, do you remember this song?
So good. Yeah, for sure.
You hit the high harmony?
Beer this afternoon. So good.
Yeah.
That's Keith on the high note.
So this is the State of Beer podcast.
Yeah.
But I was searching on iTunes. I could only find 2.
Yeah. We did quite a few. We had everybody on there from Lauren and Eric Salazar to
We were
local
on there.
breweries. Yeah, we had Crank Arm on there, right?
Yeah.
This is surreal.
So, so this is
Malkovich.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that's the joke I was even alluding to on the emails to setting this up. I'm like, you guys are not afraid of microphones, right? Like, you've done this before.
Yeah.
And you became a champion of beer. Case in point, the fact that you did a podcast about the state of beer, and it was the North Carolina state of beer. You were trying to rise the tide with all the boats that are making beer, and that's what is beautiful about the beer industry in this area, and that's what, like, Matt and I, why we do this show. It's the camaraderie, even to the same point of when I recently went to Tennessee, talking to chefs out there. They're like, oh, we never do podcasts. No one wants to do a podcast with us. It's all about the music scene here. It's all about Nashville. It's all Nashville, Memphis. I'm like, really? Because you guys are pretty good. They go, yeah, like, we're happy to be on this podcast. That's really cool for us. And it just blew me away. I'm like, no, man, in North Carolina, chefs are the rock stars. The brewers are the lead guitarists. Like, that's everybody here. It's all about the food and beverage industry, and it's really cool. And, you eat 3, 4, 5 times a day, 6 maybe. It's important, right? It's life. So why not? Why shouldn't those people be held to a higher standard or regard? And I think it's a beautiful thing.
For sure. Like, there's one thing that craft beer isn't always good at is like telling the stories. Like, you want to get to know the owner of a brewery and be like, how did you come up with the name? You got to tell me this. Or like, I may know an inside story that the rest of the public doesn't know, and I want to get this person to share that story with the rest of the world. And brewers are pretty open about process and pretty open about, where these things came from and mishaps and things like that. And, they're used to, in this microcosm of just talking to other brewers, they want to share stories with other people. Yeah. And that helps people connect with the brand. Like, if you're sharing a mishap and showing a weakness and people are like, oh, that was funny. They told a funny story in this podcast that I heard. And we got a lot of...
Humans make beer, guys.
Hey, back to the winning a GABF, because I want to. So that is a competition, obviously, through everywhere in America.
Correct.
Can
It's
submit.
Put on by the Brewers Association
The
every
Brewers
year.
Association, and you just send in beers. I imagine there's an application fee.
Yep.
and-
It's
yeah.
quite expensive actually to do
Okay.
it. We send this year we got to send in 4 per location. So we have one location. We send in 4 beers in Whitewall. We always send Rickshaw. We always send, and then we'll pick some of our seasonals. 8,500 entries this year.
Okay. And you guys got, so does it mean that you guys got number 1, or you placed, or what exactly
So
does the...
this is a gold medal for Whitewall this
gold
year.
medal.
So in the style of American Belgo, which is a blend of American and Belgian style beers. Our take on that interpretation was to take a wit and dry hop the shit out of it with
Okay.
Citra. Really proud of this beer because it's my baby. I've been brewing this beer for almost 10 years. It started on my back porch of making a low ABV hoppy beer. And this was pre-New England hazy thing. And so people were like, why are you hopping a wheat beer like this? It's like, hops stick to wheat and yeast. So when you do that, it makes this happen. And people thought I was nuts, but they drink it like, ooh, actually that works. And now for it to go from my backyard to Mike scaling it up into production level and become the best of its style in the nation, according to BJCP and BA, or Brewer Association beer judges. That's pretty awesome.
That's a big fucking deal.
It is a big fucking deal.
So you feel validated. You're like, yeah, that was my idea. And actually, people like
I
me.
said, 10 years ago, that wasn't happening. There weren't heavily hopped wheat beers. That was not something that was done a lot. Some people did, but not a lot.
And how many categories are there in the GABF?
So like 100 and something.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's
Over
300
100.
and something medals, 3 rewarded per category.
Okay.
And they're actually, this year is the first year that they really expanded to some styles that are actually current and popular.
Juicy
which
and
is-
hazy
yeah,
IPAs,
juicy and hazy IPA category.
which had the most entries per category, like 400 and something entries in those categories, which is a lot for a single category.
Which is, it's wild because these beers are highly volatile. And so you're shipping these beers months in advance. And you're hoping that this guy or this girl who is tasting this beer, I mean, these things don't have a shelf life. You know, like the shelf life should be
Right.
like less than a month. Drink it quick.
Born
meant to
on
be drank
date.
fresh. Yeah. So you have to send it as soon as it's ready, and then hope that it stays cold and gets to somebody, and they get it and they taste it, and they're like, "Yep, this is it." It's pretty wild to kind of think about.
Yeah, there's a
It
lot
Seems
of-
like a broken system there. You need
Right.
to like move the reviewer should be traveling, not
Right.
the beer.
Right.
Yeah.
that would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, but
But
that's all-
logistically a nightmare.
Yeah, logistically.
Quite expensive.
Can we talk about the future? Because I went on my own little beer tour last night. I went to State of Beer.
Oh, nice.
I had a couple beers there, and then I went to Crank Arm and had a couple beers there. And I talked to the gents behind the bar, and of which both bartenders were all just so like gregarious, chatty,
Gio.
and involved.
Gio was on last night.
Yeah, and everyone's like really cool. I did say, I'm like, hey, by the way, I'm about to have these guys on the podcast. So, so what's up? Both, it's funny. Both guys from separate companies each said the exact same thing. You got to talk about the expansions. You got to talk about what's next, like what we're all doing, and they are so thrilled. And like even customers around were like, yeah, man, we're stoked, and like Crank Arm's gonna be like blowing it up, bro, and like and the original aforementioned pizza place, Trophy's Pizza Place on Morgan, apparently is also going to blow it up, bro.
Yeah.
So I would love to know what is coming up because it sounds like there's a lot happening with both companies. So maybe Adam, why don't you talk about Crank Arm first?
So I sort of alluded to this earlier, and I think you guys pop this because this is something weird.
Yeah,
this is in the weird beer category.
Weird beer alert.
Whoop, and a little bit of Brett spilling on out. We are working into our new production facility. All our beers are made on Davie Street from day one right now. Cranking it out of there as much as we can make. And we're maxed out. So the new facility will increase production, 20-barrel, 3-vessel system. Let us do lots of fun stuff there. We're building a barrel aging room so we can make more beers like what we're pouring right now, which is our Brett Saison Beat. This is in our weird beer category. Funky Ride series means it was aged in wine barrels with the introduction of souring agents, specifically Brettanomyces. So this is funky, tart, and earthy. is the best way to say this beer. This one's mine. So
I used to date a girl that was described the exact same way.
Must have been fun.
Didn't work out.
This is like the Beaujolais of beers.
Yeah, this is really
Like
fun.
naturally made.
So the color is
doing
amazing.
so local beets juiced by Happy and Hale. Once again, talking about using folks that are local. Wine barrel aged.
Fantastic.
It's really crazy. So we're going to do a barrel aging room. We're hoping to get fooders in there. Canning is a huge part of our expansion as well. So we're now committing to canning at least once a month, 3 brands at a time. Monday we release White Wall, Tandem, and Motivator in 16-ounce cans. Been a huge thing for us with the canning. So increasing production, focusing more on packaging because, like we said, kegging and cans are a perfect vessel. Also, can art helps sell beer. Chris and I were
Turns
actually
out.
talking about that when you almost ran us over. That's what we were talking about specifically when you almost ran us over.
I would have stopped the whole process. You know how many people in this state would have my head if I would have ran you guys over?
There's
Just
about
for their-
5 people on my side that would have loved you for it. But,
The aforementioned bartender that I just tied
he's
off.
great. He's good. It's awesome. Gio's the best.
All right, well, that's amazing. So that's happening. And what about you, Chris, with Trophy? What's coming next?
So we have some huge changes coming over to Morgan Street. So if you guys you mentioned it earlier, that it's kind of a crowded space. So we are getting ready to take over the rest of that building, which is going to expand our seating opportunities there, and then also going to add a huge expansion to the kitchen. And we're going to be rolling out a much more prolific kind of barrel program there. Adam mentioned more barrel aging happening at his new location, but it's similar to what we're going to be doing there. We've started sourcing some pretty large wine fooders, so we're going to be doing some extended barrel aging or some extended fooder aging of some sour beers, both light and dark, golden and dark sours, and a bunch of small barrels in a funky space to kind of use for blending. But the cool thing is we're going to be able to seat more people, be able to spend more time there so you're not feeling like you have to eat your pizza and get out. You know, you can sit there, spend some time. We're going to add about 100 seats, windows on 2 of the 3 sides, and really be able to let people see what's happening, look inside the space. And we're actually going to use that for like private parties and brewers' dinners and tastings and things like that so people can be a little bit more connected to the process.
Nice.
That's something that we learned in the past over at Morgan Street and now even at Maywood is that people want to know what's going on back there. They want to see people working. They want to see, hey, what's that guy doing? You know, oh, look, he's transferring, which can be good or bad. You know, if somebody's on a ladder in a precarious position, it's like, dude, don't do that. People are sitting in the tap room, you know, like, or something goes awry. You don't want witnesses. But
Witnesses.
yeah,
Okay, but so then is that the goal of like the new modern industry of beer making? Like diversity, tons of selection, small batches, or is somebody just gonna like mass produce all these like very elegant, beautiful, you know, Brettanomyces aged in oak barrel, but on a 100,000 barrel scale? Like, is I don't know. Like, where are we going with beer?
I think you look at it, I mean, beer's food, right? And everyone always wants to push the boundaries. And it's hard to do something like this on a very large scale. And the smaller batches tend to give a better quality. Just like if you have a giant kitchen versus a smaller kitchen, depending on, well, I guess it depends on the people doing it, the quality of ingredients, the equipment that you have. If you put your best foot forward, it's going to be awesome. It's a lot harder to do that on a larger scale. Mm-hmm. Find that folks really are looking for these unique, interesting beers that take more time than just your standard beers. No, there's nothing, they're all delicious, but this took 16 months to make.
Wow.
It spent a lot of time in the barrel.
As opposed to most of your stuff you're making in
anywhere
weeks.
like 3 weeks, 4 weeks is. I mean, some of these New Englands you can crank out even faster. I mean, it's because that's what it being fresh is important. This takes time, and you can taste the difference. This is funky Kool-Aid, man.
And it's an opportunity to continue to like keep changing and evolving. Like we think that if you brew a huge batch of sour beer, you got to think about it. It's a small niche customer, so you have to be able to tell your story. You need to connect with that person, and also have like feedback and talk to them about what they like about it, what they don't like about it, and have a server who can describe those things and a bartender who can describe those things, and say, kind compare it to wine and make all these different comparisons so that people can connect with it. A huge batch of beer like that is like a daunting task for me to think about, like, okay, how are we going to explain this to servers? What's the most important things to tell a server about this beer? What's the most important thing for them to convey to the guest? And what do we want the guests to be tasting from this? Or like, how do we lead them in that direction?
Yeah.
So having a huge amount of that liquid is, you kind of end up with egg on your face if you don't move it, you know, or you don't sell it. It's the kind of thing, like, also you want to change things up. You taste a beer, you're like, damn, you know what I would do next time? Every time we always do that. You taste a beer, you're like, somebody will be like, dude, I love this beer. And then you're like, somebody else tastes it, like, you know what I would like to do with it? And no matter what, every tasting we sit in for like barrels or any like hop tasting or something like that, it's like, okay, this is good, but.
Oh, by the way, the crank arm I had last night with habaneros, it was a stout, I believe.
Holy Spokes. Smoked porter, habanero, chocolate, cinnamon, vanilla.
Spicy.
This
Oh
is a
my God.
prime example of exactly what he was just talking about. Holy Spokes originally was a smoked porter with habanero and chocolate. Always had Videri nibs since the first day we made it. We experiment on even a smaller scale with pins and firkins casks at the tap room. So we'll go, hey, you know what? Something would taste really good in this. Cinnamon. Cinnamon would be a great way to sort of help this out. So we add cinnamon to that cask. Wow, perfect. All right, the next batch of Holy Spokes, it's going to have cinnamon in it. You know, vanilla is really going to help that beer. We
really
add vanilla
round it out, yeah.
to the next beer. So now what you're tasting right now is literally 5 years of evolution of one beer that when people had it, I'd say 90% of the public's like, this is perfect. I love this. This is great. And we're like, no, we're going to change that a little bit. And we did. And, you know, there's a few, maybe I'd say 1% of the public like, no, I like the original best. But everyone else is like, wow, there's this complexity. There's some heat on the back. There's a nice chocolatiness.
Kind of like a jam band. It's like you're like the fish of brewing, and you guys are just like.
I hate jam music, but otherwise, it's okay.
No, but I'd argue you got the beard. You're wearing a cool shirt.
It's okay.
I would think you'd be a prime fish. then.
Yeah, I know. You might think that, yeah.
What? Or like a chef, you know, like if you're a chef and you can throw a million ingredients in a dish, but doesn't need it.
Yeah.
You know, that's the hardest part is like to self-edit, be like, okay, that's enough.
Well, you got to taste what you're making, and then I mean, this plate, perfect. Maybe could use a little bit of this, that, a little spice here and there. It's the same way, except we have to wait a little longer. Can't just taste it right then and be like, this is what's up. We got to wait till that batch is done, and with our ever evolving thing, you might only see it once a year, so it takes us 5 years to get it wherever you're going.
So what is the next thing in terms of cool kid on trend stuff in beers? I mean, obviously we're in the sour phase and the sessionable stuff, and what's the next thing that we don't even know about?
Return to lagers, man.
Yeah, it is
the
that.
That's the
return
move.
to lagers.
The return to lagers. Your dad beers are coming back.
But real lagers, not watered down American lagers, like legit, like delicious pilsners, lagers, things that have actual flavor. You're not counting calories, you're counting just deliciousness.
Something an old Scotsman would be prideful of, or something, right?
Well, like a beer that's like focuses on the ingredients, the fermentation, the yeast, because these beers, they are the beer that you see everywhere, but they're also a beer that are very difficult to make on a regular basis. You can't hide anything in a bad lager, you know what I mean? Any imperfections.
So ales are out, lagers are in.
Yeah,
That's the future, I'm
and we
telling
can
you.
also look at like what happened in the past 6 months. 6 months ago, the brewed IPA was invented, and now is huge right now. Like it's this guy said, I'm going to make the antithesis of the New England IPA. So the New England IPA is big-bodied, juicy, hazy. This guy said, I'm going to make something light, still hoppy, dry as all get out, and clear.
No bitterness.
And so there's no bitterness. So that happened 6 months ago, and everyone's making a brewed IPA. It's extremely popular. It's happening super fast. We're able to see these trends happen wherever they are in the.
Wait a second. A brewed IPA?
Brute.
Oh,
like brute. Yes.
Yeah.
Like dry.
But if
With
you say,
umlauts.
But if you say IPA, then that's not lager, though.
No. I was
you're
saying.
just talking about
I was saying
You're
another
saying-
style.
Oh,
Correct,
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, because isn't it? I mean, I've heard from many people about Budweiser that Budweiser in itself is actually technically a very difficult beer to make, and like at the quality level that they're doing,
And the size, the amount.
right,
And consistency
And
of brewing it all around the world.
consistent- and
to
that,
make
like-
it taste the same.
like you can have your opinion on whether it's good or bad. That's subjective, but the process of making that beer to taste exactly the way it does taste is not necessarily an easy process.
No.
Yeah. So that's fine, and Budweiser will, probably never go away, probably.
Right.
But I think the beauty that I really enjoy about what I'm feeling is happening now, and we'll get out of here soon if, Matt, you don't have any other questions, but
I have a couple.
Okay, all right. Well, then we're going to be here for a while. This is a Joe Rogan podcast. We all have businesses that have to be taken care of. You guys got to brew beer. But I think what is making a lot of sense to me now about like the new industries or whatever is you guys are content being North Carolina brewers. And maybe you dabble with another state or two. But really, it's like you can live a really good life with a good amount of beer brewed. I'm sure you guys drive nice cars and have cool houses or something like that.
My car's 16 years old.
Yeah, but it's an Alfa Romeo. So,
Right, yeah, Honda Element.
But the idea is that it's the anti-American, the original American dream was that, like, I'm going to take this to the end. I'm going to be a billionaire someday.
Yeah.
Instead, it's like, no, I'm just going to have a really good quality of life, making really good beer or whatever product you're making. I'm just going to really enjoy what I do, service my community. If my community seems to grow a little bit bigger than I expected, that's pretty cool.
It's a lifestyle.
But I don't need to be the next Anheuser-Busch. I just need to live this life.
Yeah.
And I like that because then this idea can happen in Portland, and it does there, or San Diego, it does there, and Denver, it happens there. All the
San Jose,
my hometown, baby. I told you I'm from San Jose.
I thought you're from
right?
LA.
No, I'm from San Jose now. But that's what's really cool is that like now it's like now you go as a traveler, you go into this new town and you're just like, what's cool here?
Yeah.
And the vibe is people are so stoked on that local community of what they're making with beer. Wine sometimes is tough because you got to go to the right places that can actually make wine. But beer, you can make it anywhere. And if you're conscious about it and sourcing right, you can make really good beer. So I love that aspect of where the beer industry is going. Do you agree, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, my mind always goes to like, oh, well, business. How do we make more money? How do we make this sustainable? But that's a really good point. If you've reached a modicum of success and you're happy doing what you want, is that enough? And that is very cool that you can go anywhere and be like, and I want to taste the local beer. I want to taste what's really good.
Because in reality, I mean, if you guys really did sell your beer at the same rate, let's say, of say an Anheuser-Busch, but just to your state, you'd be fucking rich.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of room for growth is my point, and you don't need to go beyond the state. You could be here, and people could really enjoy what you're doing at a higher level. I'm sure you guys always want to sell more. I mean, that's just kind of in nature.
Sure.
Not like you're like, oh, we're good. No, I don't want to sell anymore. No, you want to sell more. You want to move forward, but moving forward doesn't mean total
You want to
world
get a new
domination.
Honda Element.
Yeah.
Right.
They don't make them anymore.
It's not world domination.
The new one. Yeah, not world domination, but triangle domination. No, but and still make good. And you know what the interesting part about that is? It's like I remember when you were a kid, and if you had parents or people that traveled, they would always bring you something back from the place that they were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That almost never happens anymore because everything's either made in fucking China or Vietnam, and it's like everything you can get almost the same thing anywhere, or just call Amazon and get it to you the next day. Yeah. But I guess with the kind of cool thing is with beer, you can bring back a local beer from somewhere.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I love it.
And it's a flavor of the
Do you
place.
still
Yeah.
Oh, hold on.
Don't play
I
me
keep
off.
trying to play Matt off. It's like we're at the Oscars right now.
Yeah.
You're done, Matt.
I have some pertinent questions for these guys.
All right. We got to get out of here. It's like a 4-hour show.
A couple of quick fire then.
Yeah.
Do you guys know statistically where we are at North Carolina in terms of production of beer versus other states?
The top 10.
We're in the top 10?
Yeah.
Like number 10 or?
I think it was 8 last time that
Sounds about right,
that
yeah.
the Brewers Association released information about it.
Okay.
We were number
Nice.
8.
Nice.
And then also in the top 10 fastest growing beer markets too.
Okay. Cool. So keep drinking the beer.
Please.
The other thing, and we didn't even talk about it, but it seems to me hops is all the craze. And the only way I wrap my head around it is it seems to me, if you make a wine parallel, that the hops are almost like the grapes in the sense that they are providing the flavor and the aromas and the difference for a major portion. I mean, obviously there's the way you're fermenting and stuff like that, but would that be appropriate thing to say?
It's interesting that with it, actually, it's all with the elements of wine, you have, the grapes and the yeast, right?
Yeah.
For us, it's a
obviously
little bit the malt, the yeast. Actually, some beers, the yeast is so, like lagers, for instance, most of that flavor is coming from the grain and the yeast and actually the water profile. So it is paralleled. But with us having the ability, it's acceptable for us to add more ingredients to beer than it is for wine, and that's where we get to have all this fun.
Yeah.
It's become. It used to be Ryan Huskabo, the purity law of 1516. You can only add these ingredients for beer.
Yeah.
America's like, excuse my French, fuck that.
Yeah.
We're going to add whatever we want as long as it, well, some people add stuff just to beer to make it weird, but I feel like our philosophies are let's add things to beer to make it taste better or make this thing happen.
Is this beer complete? Yeah.
Yeah, it's so hops are, though, I mean, Unicycle is a prime example of that. This beer is a single hop pale ale. It lets us see the hop characteristic of a beer through bittering, flavor, aroma, all the additions to see how that tastes. So we're getting 100% of that. So we use that when we go into things like Tandem or Double IPA. We go, all right, this batch, we got this new hop. Well, it was called Equinox. Now it's Euconaut. We love the flavor profile of that hop. We're going to blend it with Azaka and Citra, and yes, it's going to give it the flavor to that. But there are the lagers. You're looking at your grain, because especially New England's, you're getting 100% hops to the face. You're tasting, that's all you get. That's all you're tasting. But some of these things, lagers like Chris was talking about before, that is yeast, water, and the grain mostly. You get some hops, Pilsners that definitely get some of the hop flavor, but in general, it's just those things that are shining through.
Okay.
That's the cool thing about like doing a single hop project is that so many people have tasted these hops in a blend. Typically, because you're using them in different stages of the brewing process, either in bittering or secondary, or if it's the last dry hop that you're throwing into the batch. It's cool to just focus on that because so many people have heard of hop names, but they don't know what it tastes like. So you have one of those things, and you're like, oh, that's Mosaic. That gives me tropical fruit flavors. And it's like something I've never
experienced.
experienced.
That's where I was going with the wine. Like, I know if I taste Syrah, it's going to be a little bit black olive, a little spicy, and a little strawberry jam, all in one. So, yeah.
But I don't think we have standards like that anymore. Like now, it's like with beer.
Well,
there are no
I guess in a single hop beer, you would have an idea,
Absolutely.
a standard. But
Correct.
But what you're saying is in beer, you can put in so many multifaceted,
multi-dimensional.
It's like a blend.
Yeah, it's like a blend. It's like a
hop blend.
Yeah,
Hop blend.
field
Triple
blend,
hopped.
And okay, one last question then. So, it's still the West Coast, right? That's making the most high quality hops. Is that right?
Producing the hops?
Producing, yeah.
Yeah, typically, like the Pacific Northwest. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really
The Willamette Valley.
because of temperature and specific soils. You
Age
can't,
of the vines as well. They've been growing hops there for 100 and something years, so that's getting my head start. We're just starting to try to develop them here on the East Coast.
Will it ever be possible then? I mean,
Sure.
Well, they'll
Anything's
always
possible.
be older than us.
Yeah.
So.
Correct.
I really appreciate you guys all being in the show. Please, if you haven't already, go to Trophy. Go to the Trophy Brewing. You're on Maywood. You're also
South Wilmington Street.
South Wilmington Street. Go to Crank Arm.
319 West Davie Street.
319 West Davie Street. It really is a pleasure to have you guys in here. And just,
Thanks for having us, man.
This
Thank
is
you so
exactly
much.
what I wanted this podcast to be. A conversation about beer, a conversation about community, and showing how it can always be better.
High five.
yeah, go drink Trophy and Crank Arm. You'll drink very merrily.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the NC F&B podcast. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.